It's debate night in New York City. Steep federal funding cuts, high housing costs, struggling small businesses. There's serious concerns in need of solutions.
New York City is in the midst of the worst affordability crisis in our history.
New Yorkers need a fighter. New Yorkers need someone who's going to defend the city right now.
Tonight, live on the same stage, hear from two Democratic candidates running for New York City Comptroller who think they have what it takes to get the job done. Brooklyn Council member Justin Brannan.
I've stood up to the mayor, speaking truth to power. Nobody knows the city budget better than I do.
And Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine.
It's a job I've been preparing for my entire career.
From Pix 11, your local election headquarters. This is Race for New York City Comptroller, the 2025 Democratic Primary Debate, co-sponsored by NYC Votes, the voter engagement initiative of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. 1010 wins at 92.3 FM, 94.7 The Block, El Diario Nueva York, and Schneps Media. Now, here are your moderators, Pix 11's Dan Manarino and Henry Rossoff.
Good evening on this debate night in New York City. I'm Dan Manarino here along with my colleague Henry Rossoff. We thank you all at home for joining us for this important hour-long Democratic primary debate, which, by the way, is the first official debate of this primary election cycle. And it's being held with early voting set to start in just a little more than 2 weeks. The race for New York City Comptroller, not the most prominent on the ballot, but the Comptroller plays an important role, no doubt, in city politics. The office holder serves as the city's financial watchdog with a number of jobs related to that, but there are two major responsibilities. One is managing the city's 5 public pension funds worth roughly $285 billion. But generally, you most hear from the Comptroller because of the second big job, auditing city agencies when it comes to both spending and performance. So in practical terms, that often puts the Comptroller at odds with the mayor. Oh, and by the way, every comptroller since 1994, including the current comptroller, Brad Lander, has gone on to run for the office of mayor. So this is a race to watch. The two Democratic candidates joining us tonight are the ones that met the New York City Campaign Finance Board's requirements, and you can find those on our website. The board is the nonpartisan independent city agency that administers the city's public matching funds program and oversees the citywide debates. It also equips voters with the resources they need to participate in local democracy, like the New York City Voter Guide through its NYC Votes voter engagement initiative. And remember, New York City voters have never had as much power as they do right now with the advent of ranked choice voting. So be sure to make your voice heard.
In an attempt to reach the most viewers, this debate is available on several platforms in different languages, broadcasting in English on Pix 11, streaming on Pix 11 Plus, Pix11.com, and the Pix 11 YouTube page, as well as the Odyssey app and the 1010 Wins website. It is also available in Spanish on Pix 11 by selecting the SAP option. Plus, we have Spanish subtitles available. And we're streaming in Spanish on Pix11.com as well as on the Odyssey app and the Wins Noticias website. To watch this debate in Mandarin, head over to the Facebook page of the Chinese American Planning Council. We have that Mandarin stream embedded in an article on our website as well.
All right, candidates, let's get to tonight's rules, okay? Each of you will get 60 seconds to answer a question. For any follow-ups, you will get an additional 30 seconds, and you will also have 30 seconds for rebuttals if you are called upon. We should also note to everybody at home that the candidates' position on the stage, as well as the order they are asked questions and the order they deliver closing statements, were all decided by random draw. And with all of that out of the way, are you ready? Let us begin. Gentlemen, we are less than a month away from primary day and mere weeks away from early voting. In our most recent poll done just this week, 29% of voters tell us they are still undecided when it comes to the comptroller race. So what is your pitch to that undecided voter to earn their vote, because it is such a big number? Mr. Levine, by random drawing, we begin with you. You have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. This is a time of enormous challenges in New York City. We have housing costs which are out of control. We have real public safety challenges connected to our broken mental health system. We are under constant attack from Donald Trump. I'm running for comptroller to take on these fights. What you'll hear from me tonight is a positive platform about how I will get results for New Yorkers. This is what I've done my whole life. I started my career as a public school teacher and proud union member, teaching math and science at a junior high school in the South Bronx. I later took on the big banks and founded a credit union in Washington Heights, that's invested $100 million in the community. As a council member, I passed legislation making this the first place in America where every tenant has the right to an attorney if they face an eviction. I have taken on this mayor and the previous mayor to win for parks, for public health, for tenants. As comptroller, I will take on Donald Trump, and I will be fiercely independent of whoever the next mayor is so that we can win to make New York City more affordable, safer for all.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you very much. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. What is your pitch to that undecided voter? Because the number is so big right now, to sway them to vote for you, you also have 60 seconds.
Sure. So I'm running for controller because I currently serve as chair of the Finance Committee, where I oversee the largest municipal budget in the country at $115 billion. As a matter of fact, today, I spent the whole day in an NYPD hearing going over their budget. I've done 3 weeks of budget hearings. So I have the qualifications, but right now you need the guts. You need someone who's got the guts to stand up to the next mayor, to Donald Trump. And I've proven over the past 3.5 years that I'm the only one in this race that's spoken up and fought against this mayor. Clawed back over $1 billion in cuts to our libraries, to our parks, to CUNY, to things that New Yorkers rely on. I'm the guy that helped make that happen and fought against Eric Adams. Look, we need a fighter in this moment. Donald Trump is coming for us. New York City is in his crosshairs. And meanwhile, the city is spiraling out of reach for working people. We cannot sit on our hands as politicians. We've got to do something. And I believe the sharpest tool we have to bring down the cost of living is that $115 billion budget.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, I see you raise your hand. 15 seconds to you.
Well, I have a feeling you're going to hear this multiple times tonight. I just want to say the truth is I have stood up to Eric Adams again and again and again. I've taken him on COVID, on his rhetoric on migrants, on his cuts to parks. I've called him out for his corruption. I've sounded the alarm when he was compromised by Trump. I have took on this mayor, and I will take on the next mayor.
Leave it there. Mr. Brannan, 15 seconds to you, and then we're moving on.
For the past 3.5 years, this mayor has tried to cut CUNY, our parks, our libraries. Mark Levine was nowhere to be found. Never spoke up, never came to a rally. If you're going to fight Donald Trump, you need to do more than send a couple of strongly worded letters.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, thank you. We're going to move on. You have plenty of time to talk to each other. Henry has the next question.
In fact, we're going to talk about something Mayor Adams did just yesterday. Good evening, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you here. He was at a Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas encouraging crypto moguls to back local lawmakers who support the industry. Let's take a listen.
I believe we need to have a bit bond, and I am going to push and fight to get a bit bond in New York so you can do those same bond investments in New York City.
Floated the idea that Bitcoin could be used to both pay taxes and city fees. Mr. Brannan, we're beginning with you this time. Do you support the idea of a quote-unquote bit bond, and is this a realistic way to pay the city? 60 seconds.
Absolutely not. We should not be investing any money, especially retiree money, should go anywhere near crypto or Bitcoin. It would be deeply irresponsible. We barely have 20 years of historical data. This is an asset class that is renowned for chaos and uncertainty and market fluctuation and volatility. New York City should have nothing to do with Bitcoin.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, 60 seconds for you as well. What do you think of the idea of a bit bond, and is this how the city could be able to be paid?
I totally agree with what the council member just said. This is an asset class which has been dominated by speculators, has now been swamped by literally thousands of meme coins, which are taking advantage of unsuspecting Americans. The most prominent of which now is a meme coin owned by the Trump family, which has become nothing but a blatant vehicle for corruption, a way for people to put money into the pockets of the Trump family. So I think it's absurd that we would be promoting this as a bond, an investment class, or a vehicle for putting hardworking New Yorkers' savings, retirements, or future pensions. I will stand up for sober analysis of our pension fund, and at the moment, that means no Bitcoin investments.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Dan?
Gentlemen, House Republicans recently passed a sweeping package of President Trump's tax proposals and spending cuts, getting through by a single vote. The House plan referred to as the Big Beautiful Bill. It raises the SALT cap, it ends the Biden-era clean energy tax credits, makes changes to Medicaid and SNAP programs that could leave millions without health insurance and access to much relied-on programs. So, Mr. Levine, what, if anything, could you do to protect New Yorkers from losing access to these critical federal programs? 60 seconds.
Donald Trump is attacking this city on every front. He's attacking our people. He is ripping immigrant families apart. He's attacking LGBTQ New Yorkers. He's taken a sledgehammer to our economy. He's trying to tear down nonprofits. He has literally stolen money out of city government bank accounts. And now we face cuts to critical services, healthcare, housing assistance, food assistance. And we need a city budget that is built to protect us against those looming cuts. It's why I have strongly denounced the executive budget put forth by Mayor Adams, which does not add a single dollar to our reserve funds. I believe we need to add $1 billion to our rainy day fund, $1 billion to our general reserve fund, so that we have an added buffer to fill in gaps for critical services when and if the Trump cuts come.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question. What, if anything, could you do to protect New Yorkers from losing access to these critical federal programs? 60 seconds as well here.
Sure. I mean, look, you've got half of New Yorkers who are on Medicaid. There's no good answer here because almost 10% of our budget relies on federal grants and federal subsidy. There is not a city in this country that can survive without federal grants and federal subsidy. And unfortunately, right now, we have an administration at City Hall who is colluding and compromised and is afraid to stand up to Donald Trump. You have, a high school kid the other day who was picked up by ICE, and Eric Adams is afraid to even say anything about him. He's saying, go talk to them about it. Don't talk to me about it. So this moment calls for a fighter, someone who's going to stand up to Donald Trump, someone who's going to fight fire with fire. And if they come for our money, you got to be ready to sue back and meet that urgency. But if you can't even stand up to Eric Adams, how are you going to stand up to Donald Trump?
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Henry has the next question.
Mr. Levine just mentioned this. Let's talk about those clawbacks. In recent months, the Trump administration has targeted New York City by clawing back money meant to help defray the cost of the migrant crisis. The White House literally pulled $80 million directly out of city accounts and canceled more than $100 million in additional payments. The city is suing over this. How would you, as comptroller, protect New York City from the Trump administration pulling back even more money? Mr. Brannan, you first. 60 seconds.
Sure. Thank you, Henry. I mean, one of the things that was so concerning is that not only that Elon Musk was taking money out of our account while we were all asleep, but that it took City Hall almost 2 weeks to send a letter, to fight back, to sue back, to say, look, you can't do this because this money was appropriated by Congress. You've got to be ready to fight fire with fire. You've got to have that killer instinct. You've got to be ready to fight back. And right now, again, because City Hall is compromised, we're not seeing that. And New Yorkers are suffering because of it. We've got to build a fiscal firewall around the city by deploying money into the communities that need it most. And in a moment like this, elected officials at all levels of government, their number one responsibility should be to stand in that breach between the federal government and our most vulnerable who are under attack by this administration.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, same question. What would you do as comptroller to protect New York City from more potential clawbacks? 60 seconds.
Yeah, look, I want people to understand what actually happened. This is money that we had a contract for with the federal government. We delivered services, paid out expenses, and then the federal government seized the money out of our account. This was plainly illegal. And it's unfortunate that it took weeks for us to sue. It's why I believe that the comptroller should have independent power to sue if the law department doesn't. And I'm also sick and tired the way the mayor and the president continue to demonize migrants coming to the city. Y esto lo voy a decir en español. Los que están llegando acá son algo muy positivo para Nueva York. Por eso yo los defiendo y los defenderé para siempre. The people arriving to New York City are something positive for New York. I talk to them all the time. They want to work. They will make New York City stronger. It's why I will defend them against attacks from the Trump administration and, if necessary, against an indifferent City Hall.
Staying with the Trump administration for a follow-up, we've seen since the beginning of the year really wild swings on Wall Street spurred by actions coming out of the White House. Mr. Brannan, 30 seconds. What would you do if elected comptroller to help the city withstand and stand up with some of these wild swings we've seen? 30 seconds.
Well, look, our city's economy is almost 20% relies on Wall Street. So that revenue is very important to pay cops and firefighters and teachers. Look, it's about building those public-private partnerships. It's about building, even if you have to work with the congressional delegation, the Republicans in New York City, to say, look, you can't come for New York City. Right? Look, for me, I'm unfortunately represented by Nicole Maliotakis in Congress. When I hear that even she is worried about how far these cuts go, that's how you know it's a real problem. Right now, we have no one at home at City Hall to fight back for us.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, how would you, if elected comptroller, help insulate New York from some of these wild swings we're seeing on Wall Street? 30 seconds.
Yeah, Donald Trump, who ran on his business acumen, has been a disastrous manager of the United States economy. And we're feeling it here in New York. with tourism down, with rising interest rates causing a slowdown in construction and investments of all sorts, with small businesses suffering because supply chains are disrupted. I will fight back on every front with our allies in Congress. I'll fight to have a budget which protects us by increasing our reserve funds. I'll fight to support small business. I'll use every tool at my disposal to defend against these attacks.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Dan has the next question.
Thank you, Henry. Gentlemen, just last night, Elon Musk left the Trump administration after criticizing the big, beautiful bill. He says he will now rededicate himself to his companies like Tesla. So the pension fund you would manage as comptroller have more than 3 million shares of Tesla's stock. That's currently about $1 billion in holdings. So the current comptroller has announced plans to sue Tesla, saying that Musk is not concerned enough with his company and that he's hurting the stock. Mr. Levine, coming to you first here, should this lawsuit still go ahead? You have 30 seconds.
Well, the lawsuit should absolutely go ahead. I want to be clear that the job of the comptroller is to protect the pension funds, to maximize returns for retirees and future retirees. And I believe in this case that Tesla is a bad investment. And I agree with the council member that we should divest from that stock. Not a decision I make lightly. My goal here is at all times to have a win-win, to invest in businesses that do the right thing for diversity, for the environment, for workers, because I believe that is good for business. And sadly, Tesla does not meet that standard.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. Should the city's lawsuit against Tesla move forward? 30 seconds here.
Yeah, the lawsuit should continue, but also the city needs to divest from Tesla. I've called for a full divestment from Tesla. I have a plan on my website for how to do it. It's not just a bumper sticker. We have over $1 billion in Tesla. We should not be investing in a guy who spends his days dreaming up new and cruel, creative ways to screw over New Yorkers. Coming after Medicaid, coming after Social Security, coming after the 9/11 health fund. New York City retirees should not have a dime of their money invested in this maniac.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. I want to talk about the all-important topic of housing, which, according to our most recent poll, is in fact the top issue for New Yorkers. You've both proposed using pension dollars to build more affordable housing in the city. So can you explain to city workers who are counting on their pension to retire how this will provide them the best return on their investment? Mr. Brannan, beginning with you here, 60 seconds.
Sure. Look, every decision you make as the controller, first of all, has to be done in concert and cooperation with the trustees. If I can't get you and can't make the case for at least a 7% return, which is mandated by the state, if I can't say that I can get you 7% return, then we're not going to do it. But investing in housing, investing in the creation of affordable housing is a win-win. You get great returns for the 5 pension funds, and you'd be investing in New York City, in the workforce, in the economy. I'm an old fan of Dick Ravitch. I don't know how many people might remember Dick Ravitch, but I want to get back to the days we used to dream big. This is the city that came up with Mitchell Lama and Electchester and Manhattan Plaza, performing artist housing, housing for workers. We've got to get back to that. We've got to start dreaming big again in this city, and we can do it by leveraging our pension funds while still getting a great return on our investment for retirees.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, same question to you here. Please explain to city workers who are counting on their pension to retire how this will provide them the best return on their investment. 60 seconds.
Well, just to state that we have a housing affordability crisis here that is unprecedented in our history, with rents that are out of control. We've got to find more locations to build affordable housing, and that is tough. That's a fight I've been all in on. But an even bigger challenge is the financing to build that housing, which we are desperately short of. And since the time of the great Liz Holtzman, who was comptroller back in the 90s, we have established a pattern of taking a small percentage of our pension funds in a way that's prudent, that gets good returns, that is a smart investment over time to finance affordable housing that would not otherwise be built. So I put forward a plan that would invest as much as $2.8 billion and produce as much as 70,000 units that would not otherwise be built. This is a good investment. That could also provide homes for city workers. And by the way, I've called for increasing the set-aside for city workers in these housing developments from 5 to 15%. So we have a win-win possibility here. This has been one of the centerpieces of my campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. A quick follow-up here on the topic of housing. Mr. Brannan, coming to you here. Who would get the affordable housing? Who, once it's built? 30 seconds.
Well, that's the question everyone asks, is affordable for who, right? I see it as the classic story of the public school teacher who's married to the firefighter. They can't afford to live in the city right now. So we have to be targeting folks like that. Working class people, middle class folks who need to stay in the city. Some of them have to stay in the city by law because they work for the city and they can't afford to stay here. And that's a real problem. We are losing working families in the city, right? You'll hear the tabloids tell you that rich people are fleeing the city. It's not true. Working families are fleeing the city. The teacher and the firefighter are fleeing the city because they can't afford to live here.
Can you give me a specific beyond city workers who it would go to?
The plan I have would target specifically city workers, people that are employed at city jobs.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, same question to you. Who would get the affordable housing once it's built? 30 seconds here.
Everybody who's not a millionaire is struggling right now to find housing they can't afford in New York City. That includes people making minimum wage, but it also includes people who are really in the middle class, social workers, nurses, bus drivers. And we need an affordable housing plan that provides solutions for people at every rung of the income ladder. This is the plan I put forward. Yes, it will include set-asides for city workers. That is the rules in our housing policy. But it will also be there for the general New York family that is struggling now to make ends meet.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Let's mix things up a bit and talk about how you would use the comptroller's audit, its sweeping audit power, to be a watchdog on some of the biggest city agencies. A quick reminder, an audit is basically a review of not just the financial, but the performance of a said agency. The biggest agency by far in last year's budget, which when it was passed was $112 billion, voted on by lawmakers, is the Department of Education, which at the time was allocated $32.7 billion. Mr. Levine, starting with you, what specific aspect of city schools is in need of an audit? 60 seconds.
Yes, again, a city government that's spending $115 billion, we desperately need to spend this money better. We need a more efficient, more modern government that gets services directly to people who need it. And the Department of Education is Exhibit A, where we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on consultants that should be money that should be redirected to classrooms. I will direct an audit to the special ed programs that fail to identify children with special needs, that then fail to provide them services, that then shamefully make parents hire lawyers to sue to get the services they need for their children. It's outrageous. And we as a city must do better. I will aim my audits at the DOE to sort this out so that every child, regardless of their learning needs, gets the diagnosis they need, the service they need, and the respect they need from our schools.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, what aspects of city schools would you audit? 60 seconds.
Sure. Look, I mean, the DOE budget now is almost $40 billion. I don't know a public school parent or a public school teacher who feels like they're working with a $40 billion budget. Certainly, by the time that money passes through the hands of all the consultants and outside IT consultants, by the time it gets to the classroom, there's not much left. So I think you need a full across-the-board audit. I used to work for the DOE. I know that that place is the silo capital of the world, and that's part of why we have so much calcified dysfunction there, but it's affecting our outcomes. I don't think our kids are actually getting a $40 billion education. So making sure, figuring out where is that money going, that by the time it gets to the classroom, how come there's nothing left? DOE needs a full soup to nuts audit.
So you don't have a specific place that you would start? You'd want to take a broader look?
Yes. Okay. I think it demands that.
Let's stay with education here for just a minute to follow up on one of the biggest changes we've seen to the curriculum in recent years. It was Mayor Adams working to shift the city curriculum to a more phonics-based approach in the elementary school level. Mr. Levine, 30 seconds. Would you audit to make sure that's been an effective pivot?
I just want to say this is a very personal issue for me. My wife, Eva Lisa, and I raised 2 kids in the public schools. As I said, I started my career as a public school teacher. I've talked to a lot of teachers about this transition, and mostly I think it's gone well. So I think the question of whether I will audit will be based on my conversations with parents and teachers and school leaders to evaluate how this is going at the end of the school year.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brannan, what do you think of the literacy pivot to more of a phonics approach? 30 seconds.
I base it on, I have lots of teachers in my family and teachers that I talk to in the neighborhood, in the district, across the city who like it. I'd like to make sure that we're getting the right bang for our buck for what we're paying. But so far, it seems to be working, and the teachers like it. If they like it, then who am I to say?
Thank you, sir. Dan has the next question.
Let's talk about public safety, gentlemen. The NYPD got $5.8 billion in the budget last year, but it's been well documented that number does not include hundreds of millions of dollars in police overtime. So, Mr. Brannan, what aspects of the NYPD would you audit? You have 60 seconds here.
So I spent the day grilling the NYPD with our, we're in the middle of our budget negotiations. Look, the NYPD budget all told is about $11 billion. People shouldn't feel so unsafe in this city with a budget that large. Making sure, look, the police are an important part of the public safety puzzle. They cannot be the only part of the public safety puzzle. But right now, when you call 911, all that happens is a guy with a gun shows up. There needs to be other solutions. We have to make sure right now we have such a crazy overtime crisis where we're spending over $1 billion in overtime while we're trying to fill headcount and hire more cops. It would be cheaper to hire more cops than to continue paying over $1 billion in overtime.
So is there a specific thing, though, that you would audit?
I would audit the overtime. They're completely blowing it. They will come to us and say, this year we think we're going to go about $300 million over, and then reliably they blow it out by $1 billion.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, same question to you. What aspects of the NYPD would you audit? 60 seconds to you.
Well, look, we do have a very real public safety challenge in New York City. It is directly connected to the broken mental health system. I hope we have time to talk about that. There's no doubt that policing is part of the solution. And we're struggling now because we have about 2,500 vacancies in the department. And that has led the department to rely heavily on overtime, which is really a lose-lose because it ends up costing us so much more money. We need to fill those vacancies. And I will use my audit power to figure out what's going on, to figure out why we're relying so much on overtime, and hopefully to get us to a place where it is no longer necessary.
Okay, Mr. Levine, staying on the topic of policing, 5 years ago, by voting in favor of the 2020 City Council budget, you both supported cutting about $1 billion from the NYPD amidst the defund the police movement. Many of those cuts, including a reduction in overtime and taking police out of schools, which never materialized. So, Mr. Levine, what do you say to New Yorkers who are concerned now about a lack of support for police as you now seek a citywide office? 60 seconds.
Well, this was in 2020. This was June of 2020. This was the midst of the worst of the global pandemic. We were in a crisis in the city. We were in an economic crisis. We had to shift hundreds of millions of dollars to the Department of Health. I chaired the Health Committee at the time, so I was deeply immersed in this. And we had to pass a crisis budget, which did mean cuts to a lot of agencies. There were demands for far, far steeper cuts, which I did not think was prudent. And so I voted for a budget which may not have met the demands for the deepest cuts, but I felt got us through a very difficult period, a budgetary crisis, a health crisis, an economic crisis, and I think we had no other choice.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, coming to you now, what do you say to New Yorkers concerned about a lack of support for police as you now seek a citywide office? 60 seconds to you as well here.
Sure. I mean, look, I've always supported my local cops. I think defund the police is probably one of the worst, most divisive slogans I've ever heard. Because the problem is if you actually have 5 or 10 minutes to talk to someone about what it actually means, or at least what some people think it means, it makes a lot of sense, which is that cops can't do everything. Cops signed up to catch bad guys, right? Cops signed up to make people feel safe. They didn't sign up to deal with people dealing with mental illness. They didn't sign up to deal with people who are having an unchecked domestic violence issue, nonviolent domestic violence issue. They didn't sign up to deal with people who are experiencing homelessness. We're asking them to do all of this stuff. So what we're saying is the neighborhoods that are the safest are not the neighborhoods with the most cops. They're the neighborhoods with the best parks and the best schools and the best small businesses. So we're talking about we can't only invest in the cops. We're never gonna more cops our way out of every problem. But when someone calls 911, they want the cops to show up and be professional. But we also have to be investing in the things that prevent crime in the first place.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Staying with public safety here, New York State just granted new power to involuntarily commit people living on the streets and subways who cannot no longer take care of themselves and bring them to the hospitals. Mayor Adams has for some time been championing these changes that were just passed. And according to our recent poll, New York City residents resoundingly support this. Mr. Brannan, how will you audit and make sure the new involuntary committal procedures don't go too far? 60 seconds.
Sure. I mean, the Department of Homeless Services has almost a $3.5 billion budget. Spend a little over $300 million on homeless outreach. We are not getting a good return on that investment as taxpayers. I represent 2 end-of-line stations in Coney Island and Bay Ridge where we have a serious, serious homelessness and mental health crisis there on our subways. The money that is being spent to send these well-meaning outreach workers out 20, 30, 50, 60, 70, 80 times, we pay for that every single time. That is money that could be better spent in supportive housing. So getting people off the subway, someone that denies that they need help 60, 70, 80 times, that's someone that needs help, and we have to get these people into housing. We should be spending more money on getting people out of the system and into housing, and less of just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Thank you, Mr. Brannan. Mr. Levine, how would you, if elected comptroller, audit these new involuntary committal rules? 60 seconds.
As I've said, we have a mental health crisis in New York. It's playing out on the streets, on the subways, in the parks, and it is because we have stopped investing in long-term mental health care. We have not invested adequately in services like supportive housing, and I've made restarting those investments one of the central planks of my campaign. But you know, the tragedy of mental health, mental illness, is that people often don't want treatment. And so sometimes we are going to have to bring people in involuntarily. And that is not easy to do, but it is necessary often for the benefit of the patient. It can save the life of a patient and help stabilize someone. And I do agree that we needed to sharpen the rules around when and how that can be done. So I do applaud the recent changes. However, there's got to be due process. And if I sense that this is not being applied in a prudent way, then absolutely I will aim the audit tool there.
Thank you both. We're about halfway home, and Dan has the next question.
We're going to move on to the issue of rent-stabilized apartments, gentlemen, which have been in the news this week, as you both know. The Rent Guidelines Board is about to vote on if there should be a rent increase for the million units of stabilized housing. So, Mr. Levine, where do you stand on a rent freeze and its possible ripple effects to landlords? You have 60 seconds.
We have an epic housing affordability crisis. Tenants are really suffering right now. And we've had recent years where the increases have exceeded the rate of inflation. And I think to avoid more pain on tenants at a very difficult time, we should have a rent freeze this year. I want to acknowledge this is also a very difficult time for small landlords, and their costs have been going up, whether it's property taxes, water bills, energy costs, and I will fight as comptroller to help rein in those costs as well. I am sensitive to the needs of small owners while never taking my eye off the true crisis that tenants are facing in New York.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, where do you stand on a rent freeze and its possible ripple effects to landlords? You also have 60 seconds here.
Look, our government has very few tools as direct as this to actually help people in the midst of an affordability crisis, right? Very few tools where we can push a button and we can freeze someone's rent. So in a moment like this, we've got to freeze the rent. We have to also do more work with Albany to make sure that our small landlords are getting the support that they need. I represent a lot of small landlords in southern Brooklyn, and they want to make repairs to their homes, and they can't. But at a moment like this, we cannot be raising the rent on people. The data shows it. You got to follow the data. There's a very, very rare situation where we can hit a button and freeze the rent. For so many New Yorkers, you got to do it.
Okay. And Mr. Levine, just a quick follow-up here. How long should a rent freeze actually last? 15 seconds.
Well, this is a decision made every year based on economic data, based on cost of living measures, and I think it should be analyzed year to year, and that's how I would approach it.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. How long should a rent freeze last? 15 seconds.
Yeah, you have to analyze it on a year-by-year basis and base it on the merits.
So both of you saying 1 year for now. One more question on the topic of housing, because it is so important. There are tens of thousands, right, of these deeply affordable units off the market right now because landlords say they need, like we talked about, to make these substantial renovations that they simply cannot afford at this time. So, Mr. Levine, should the pension fund be used to help fix up these apartments for rent? You have 30 seconds here.
You identified a real problem. There certainly are thousands of units in rent-stabilized buildings which should be on the market and are not. Usually these have been occupied for a long time. They have very, very high costs to renovate. So we have a problem here. We've got to solve this problem. There have been various fixes in Albany that would, I think, get some of these units back on the market. I think that's very important because we do have a housing crisis. I think in terms of investing pension money, again, I laid my standard out. We got to make sure we're protecting the assets of our retirees and that we're getting good returns. If we could do that and meet that standard and get these apartments back on the market,
So
then I would be open to it.
yes or no?
But I think I need to look more closely at it.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, should the pension fund be used to help fix up these apartments? 30 seconds to you.
I mean, look, I'd have to see a proposal. If it's something that would work and we could actually get at least a 7% return for our pension funds, then we can have a conversation with the trustees. But if we can't, we can't. I will never use the pension funds as my personal piggy bank. It's got to make, number one, your main job as controller is to be a fiduciary, a chief custodian for the pension funds. Your main responsibility is delivering those strong, stable investment returns for retirees. That's it. You can't use the pension funds as your piggy bank.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Many United States companies have been doing away with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs over the last 2 years. The Comptroller's Office, so everyone knows, certifies billions of dollars in city contracts each and every year. Mr. Brannan, should New York City be doing business with any company that lacks a clear DEI policy? 60 seconds.
Now, this is a time for New York City to stand up and show who we are and to wear our hearts on our sleeves and wear our values. We're not going to hide under the bed for the next 4 years because there's a fake dictator in Washington. We've got to be willing to fight fire with fire and leverage the power that we have with an almost $300 billion pension system to say, look, if you want to do business with the city of New York, here's what you're going to need to do. And if you don't do it, we're going to take our business somewhere else. We've got to be willing to rattle that saber and stand up for ourselves. We will not cower. New Yorkers do not hide when things get tough. And this is a moment where we got to stand up and be counted.
So you would establish a clear DEI standard for certifying businesses?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Levine, same question to you, sir. 60 seconds. Should New York City do business with any company that does not have a clear DEI policy? 60 seconds.
I totally reject Donald Trump's assault on the values of diversity and equity and inclusion. These are values which have made New York stronger and made America stronger. I will use the power of the Comptroller Office to defend those values. I will form a coalition of blue city and blue state pension funds around the country. Collectively, we control over $3 trillion in assets, to go to CEOs as shareholders and say, we will not allow you to give in to Trump's pressure to abandon commitments to diversity. And I will use the power over contracting to ensure that no company gets a contract with New York that doesn't adhere to the letter and spirit of our extremely strong human rights laws in New York and New York State, which we should not retreat on. We should double down on them so the companies getting our contracts reflect our values.
So to be clear, it wouldn't just be the coalition. You would enforce New York standards individually?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Dan has the next question.
Our debate partners over at LD Audio will have the next question. So here is Edwin Martinez.
Earlier this month, a federal judge appointed a remediation manager to focus on achieving reforms at Rikers Island. How would you work with the City Hall and remediation manager to ensure the reforms finally get implemented?
And thank you to Edwin. So, Mr. Levine, coming to you first, hearing that question, how would you help reform Rikers Island? 60 seconds to you.
Primeramente, Edwin, gusto de verlo. I've visited Rikers several times. It is a horror. It should shock the conscience of every New Yorker. We've already had 5 people die at Rikers this year. The conditions there are unacceptable. Now, we've passed a milestone in which there's judicial management of the system that does remove control from the city and also perhaps limits the comptroller's direct role there as well. But I will use every power I have to continue to shine a light on the human rights catastrophe there, to ensure that this court-appointed manager does right by our city, and to not shy away from the ugly truth of what's happening there.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, hearing that question, how would you make sure the reforms finally get implemented at Rikers Island? 60 seconds to you here.
So earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I don't remember, there's been so many budget hearings, but we obviously grilled the Department of Corrections. Look, it's clear that this administration has no interest in closing Rikers. They're throwing everything in our way. They're trying to obstruct every path we take to try to keep Rikers open. Rikers has to close. I voted to close Rikers. I voted for the borough jail plan. We have to see it through. maybe not with this administration, but we have to hold the next administration's feet to the fire to close down Rikers Island. It's a humanitarian crisis. What's happening there is horrible. The fact that it's continued this long is completely insane. This administration has no interest in closing Rikers Island.
So it's not about reform for you at this point if you were to win as comptroller. It's about closing Rikers Island.
We have to close Rikers Island.
And that brings us to Henry with the next question.
Yeah, let's talk about closing Rikers Island and building those smaller borough-based jails around the city. The cost of doing that really has ballooned in recent years from an initial $8 billion budget to approximately a $16 billion budget. At the same time, the jail population has also increased, meaning when and if these smaller jails get built, they can't hold everyone in custody right now. If elected as the city's top money man, how would you help control the cost of building these jails? Mr. Brannan, coming to you first, 60 seconds.
Sure. Part of the problem is that there's a very high price for doing nothing. While Eric Adams has kicked the can down the road for not closing Rikers, things have gotten more expensive. It's a pretty easy scenario here. We're waiting too long to get this going, and that's why in the meantime the costs are going up. So I think we need to hit reset here to figure out how we move forward, because those costs will keep going up, and we can't have the next administration come in and use the same excuses to kick the can down the road. But clearly this is an example, a perfect example of a time where doing nothing is very, very costly.
Is there any way to bring the cost down, or has that moment passed and we're just trying to stay at $16 billion?
I think we should get in there and try to bring the cost down, sure, if we can. I mean, part of the reason why the costs are so high is because no one wants to do business with the city, because it's so hard to do business with the city. That's why the costs are so high. So we've got to figure that out. Mr.
Levine, if elected the city's top money man, what would you do to try and reduce the cost of building these borough-based jails? 60 seconds.
Well, I laid out the moral stakes here and why I voted to close Rikers Island, and still think that we have no choice, and that borough-based jails are a better alternative. But I have to say, we have a challenge right now. We're nowhere near the legal timeline. We have no chance of meeting it, and we're way over budget. And I have to say, I'm extremely disappointed at how community stakeholders have been treated, particularly in Chinatown, in Manhattan, which I know best, but in some of the other boroughs as well. So we're going to need a revision to this plan. We cannot meet the current timeline. We have capacity issues. And yes, we have a budget challenge. So I will fight to get us to a better place, where we have a realistic timeline, where we have more respect for communities, and where we have budgets that are more realistic.
Do you think the cost can come down, or no?
It has to. It warrants a longer discussion. The capital process in New York is broken. We are paying far too much for all kinds of infrastructure upgrades. Unfortunately, this is no exception. I have many thoughts on how we can do that, which I would certainly apply in the case of these jails.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Coming to Dan now.
And for our next question, gentlemen, we're going to go to another one of our debate partners, Julia Papa from 1010 Wins.
Much has been made of the relationship between the current comptroller, Brad Lander, and Mayor Eric Adams. The two often have seemed at odds.
With the drip, drip, drip of FBI raids and federal prosecutor investigations.
The loudest, I think Eric should, the loudest person in the city.
New Yorkers are not getting the focused, trustworthy leadership that they deserve and that they need.
Stop trying to be the shadow mayor and be the controller.
The question for you, has the relationship between Mayor Adams and Comptroller Lander been effective for New Yorkers?
And thank you to Juliet Papa for that very question. So, Mr. Lean, coming to you first here. As Juliet asked, has the relationship between Adams and Lander been effective for New Yorkers? And what kind of relationship would you seek to establish with the next mayor? 60 seconds here.
I have to say, every time I see that clip of the mayor making fun of the comptroller's voice, I'm just disgusted. And Comptroller Lander has done what a comptroller is supposed to do, which is hold the mayor accountable, hold every city agency accountable, and using all the tools at their disposal, including audit, oversight, investigation, subpoena power if necessary. This is the job of the comptroller. This is the kind of comptroller I will be. I will be fiercely independent of whoever the next mayor is. I will fight for New Yorkers, and I will use the powers of the office to ensure that taxpayers get value for their money, that New Yorkers get the services they deserve, that we are vigilant against corruption, that our city doesn't cower in the face of threats from Donald Trump. This is who I have been throughout my whole career. It's who I will be as comptroller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brannan, has the relationship between Mr. Adams and Mr. Lander been effective for New Yorkers, as Juliet asked, and what kind of relationship would you seek to establish with the next mayor? 60 seconds to you.
Look, inherently, the job of the controller is to hold the mayor accountable. Whether the mayor is your best friend or your mortal enemy, it's not personal. Your job is to hold the mayor accountable, to be that independent watchdog, to be unbought and unbossed, and answer only to the taxpayers. So I think Brad has done a great job. Certainly, I think once people start thinking about running for mayor, things take a different turn or a different tenor. But your job is to stand up for New Yorkers. If the mayor does something great, then you tell him you did a great job. If he did something wrong, you got to come after him and you got to hold him accountable. And that's what I've done. Don't just take my word for it, though. I've actually done it. For the past 3.5 years, I've fought every day. My day job is to fight against Eric Adams. I'm the only guy in this race that's called for Eric Adams to resign. I'm the only guy that stood up to Eric Adams' budget cuts. No one else has. Just me. The facts are the facts.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. Mr. Levine, 30 seconds rebuttal here.
I predicted we'd hear this several times tonight. Turns out I was right. There's only one person on this stage who endorsed Eric Adams for mayor, who campaigned passionately for him, who sought his endorsement for re-election, who received his endorsement for re-election. That is the council member. It's not me. I have stood up to this mayor again and again. I laid out many of the causes I fought for, and I will continue to stand up to this mayor and to whoever the next mayor is as well.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I endorsed Eric Adams in 2021, and then I called on him to resign. I'm the only guy in this race who called on Eric Adams to resign. No matter what the borough president says, I'm the only guy that's called on him to resign. The borough president could call him in to resign right now if he wants to, but for whatever reason, he does not. I will take on anybody. I am unbought, unbossed, and independent. Even though I endorsed Eric Adams, I still came after him.
Thank you, Mr. Brannan. Mr. Levine, 15 seconds to respond to that.
It's very simple. The council member got the mayor he wanted. The rest of us got screwed.
Okay, Mr. Levine, thank you. A quick follow-up question here for both of you on this topic. Do you want to eventually become the mayor of New York City? Mr. Levine, 15 seconds here.
No. Could have run for mayor this year. Could have run for a safe re-election to borough president. I'm running for my dream job. Really, this is what I've been working for my whole career. I want to be the Comptroller of New York, and it's a job that I will relish, not one that I will use as a launching pad.
So it's a no to eventually becoming mayor. Mr. Brannan, same question to you. Do you want to eventually be mayor of New York City? 15 seconds here.
No, I want to be the controller. I would not be running for controller if I didn't have the experience of being the finance chair for the past 3.5 years. I'm not going to sit up here and lie that I've been dreaming about being the controller since I was a little kid. I'm running for controller because in this moment, we need a fighter, and I'm that fighter.
Mr. Brannan, thank you. And gentleman, Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Let's talk about a potential future mayor. The leading candidate in every New York City mayoral poll thus far on the Democratic side is former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Pix 11's own poll just yesterday, in fact, showed him ultimately winning the race by about 8 points after several rounds of ranked choice voting. Mr. Cuomo has a very long history of public service, as we all know, though he did resign in scandal nearly 4 years ago. Mr. Brannan, beginning with you, do you have any reservations about Andrew Cuomo becoming the next mayor? 60 seconds.
Look, I think being mayor is very different than being the governor, so it's a very different job. But I haven't made a decision yet about who I'm supporting. I am also a New Yorker, and I care very much about who our next mayor is, so I haven't made a decision about that. I'm still taking a look at the field, so I'm not making an endorsement at this time.
No reservations about him being mayor, though? Forget who you're endorsing. Do you have any concerns?
Of course I have concerns.
Okay. Mr. Levine, same question to you. Any reservations about Mr. Cuomo becoming mayor? Up to 60 seconds.
Well, because I think it's extremely important that the next comptroller be totally independent of the mayor and perceived as well as totally independent of the mayor. I'm not going to be endorsing in this mayor's race. Not going to make an endorsement right now. There's a lot to weigh on former Governor Cuomo, and I know voters are sorting through it. But I'm not going to make any kind of definitive endorsement here tonight.
Following up on this, Mr. Brannan, coming back to you, if Mr. Cuomo wins the Democratic primary and you win this Democratic primary, you would be running on the same party line. So first, would you support him in November if he was the Democratic nominee and you were as well? And just mention concerns about Mr. Cuomo. What are those concerns? 30 seconds.
I'm a Democrat, so whoever wins the Democratic nomination, I will support for mayor. You know, I have concerns with some of the stuff that happened in Albany under his governorship.
Such as, sir?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. There's some stuff during COVID that was concerning. There's a lot of things that were concerning. But I would support, if he wins, I'm going to support him because he's a Democrat.
Mr. Levine, same question. If you're the Democratic nominee as comptroller and he's the Democratic nominee as mayor, would you support him in November? And what are some specific concerns you might have? Up to 30 seconds.
Well, I'm not going to presume the results of the mayor's race or the comptroller's race or any race until primary voters have made their voice heard. But I, as a Democrat, I will be supporting the Democratic slate in November, including the Democratic mayor.
Any specific concerns, sir?
I'm not going to make an endorsement tonight, and I'm not going to tip my hand on that. As I've said, there's a lot to weigh on Governor Cuomo, and I know that the voters are doing that now.
Thank you, sir. Dan?
Gentlemen, I want to talk about the all-important topic of childcare, which I know is a major expense for so many parents, right? With the average New York City family paying more than $18,000 each year for infants and toddlers. So, Mr. Levine, coming to you first on this important topic, you've said that it would cost $2 billion per year to ensure that universal childcare is done right. So how would you pay for that? You have 60 seconds, because the big question is how.
Yeah. Other than the cost of housing, the cost of childcare is the biggest driver of the affordability crisis in New York. And the estimates are that 80% of families struggle to pay that cost. And no moral society should allow that. New York City should not allow that. I put forward a plan that would extend UPK and 3K down to younger ages, beginning at 6 weeks, so that every single family who needs it has a free child care slot in their neighborhood. We do estimate the cost of this would be $2 billion. We think this could be phased in over several years. My first choice would be to find efficiencies in government, including by reining in excessive costs on outside contractors to recoup the money. This is less than 2% of the current city budget. This is doable, and I believe it's a moral imperative.
And you said you can guarantee it for those.
I think we should have guaranteed free child care for every family in New York City.
And is there a threshold salary requirement for that?
I think the model should be UPK, so that it's not means tested. There could still be private child care for those who choose to pay for it, just as there are private schools in K-12. But there should be an option that is free for every family, regardless of income.
Mr. Levine, thank you. Mr. Brannan, same question. You've actually proposed using pension funds to pay for universal child care. So can you explain why you see that as actually a good investment for those pension dollars? 60 seconds here.
Sure. I mean, look, universal child care, unfortunately, it should be done on the federal level, but we know that's not happening anytime soon. I think there are two pillars to our affordability crisis in the city right now. One of them is obviously lack of access to affordable housing, and the other is lack of access to affordable child care. You hear it every single day, that people are leaving the city because it's cheaper to put their kids into child care somewhere else. So I have a plan on my website to invest $500 million in pension funds. And it's a real estate play. We basically buy buildings in cooperation with the city and investors and set up a child care system in the city of New York. What we're seeing now is a free market failure where the providers are not getting paid enough. The parents are saying it's too expensive. This is the moment where the government needs to step in. These are the moments where the government needs to step in. And I think it would be a great investment, not just for retirees, for the workforce, for the economy, and for the future of the city.
How would you make the money back?
It's a real estate investment. The same way that the pension funds are investing in real estate now, as long as you're getting that 7% or 7.25% return, it's a great play. I'd have to convince the trustees of that, but it's worth doing.
Okay. Gentlemen, time flies when you are having fun, okay? So it is time for those closing statements. Mr. Brannan, we're going to begin with you first here. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for watching tonight. If you tuned into a Comptroller's Debate on a Thursday night, it means you really care about the future of the city. Look, I am not your conventional candidate, right? I learned 3 chords in public school. It afforded me almost 10 years of my life touring the world in a band and as a musician, just because of those 3 chords that I learned in public school. New York right now, you need a fighter. You need someone who's willing to stand up, to speak truth to power, and to do the right thing even when no one is looking. I've stood up to Eric Adams for the past 3.5 years. I'm the only guy in this race that stood up to Eric Adams, and I'm going to stand up to Donald Trump, too. I'm going to fight just as hard for your family as I would fight for mine. I want to say hi to my mom, my wife, my dog. I'll see you soon. Let's go Knicks.
Okay, Mr. Brannan, thank you. And Mr. Levine, 60 seconds, too, for your closing statement.
This is a moment where many of New Yorkers are anxious. They're anxious about our future, about the challenges in New York City we've spoken about the threat that Donald Trump represents. And I want New Yorkers to know that I believe we can take on these challenges with strong leadership. Strong leadership that fights for results for New Yorkers. This is who I've been. I have been taking on big, complicated challenges for New York and scoring wins my entire career, since I was a public school teacher in the South Bronx, since I founded a community development credit union that's made $100 million in small loans, helping families uptown, since I won a historic legislative victory and getting every tenant in New York City access to an attorney when they face an eviction. I believe in New York. I believe in the city we love. I believe we will get through this. I believe the Knicks will win tonight and take the series in 7. Thank you.
There you go. And that was going to be my next question about the Knicks. But what we'd like to do around here is throw in a bonus question after closing statements, gentlemen. So are you ready for this one? 30 seconds to each of you. Mr. Brannan, coming to you first. What will you miss most about your old job if you were to win?
Look, being paid to worry about the neighborhood where I grew up is one of the best things in the world. Being the local politician in the neighborhood is great. Being able to build 7 new public schools in my district, renovating parks and playgrounds that I grew up playing in that weren't renovated since then. It's just being in the city council is a great job, but I've really learned the power of the budget and the way that we can make life easier for New Yorkers with the budget. So I'm ready to be the next controller.
Thank you. And Mr. Levine, what will you miss most about your old job?
Well, you might not be surprised to hear that the Manhattan Borough President loves Manhattan. The vibrancy, the intensity, the diversity. I love it. I love every neighborhood. I love every inch of it. And to spend the last 4 years waking up every morning fighting for this borough has been an absolute joy. I'll continue to fight for Manhattan and hopefully all 5 boroughs, but I'll miss being the Manhattan Borough President.
Mr. Levine, thank you. And thank you at home for watching this official Democratic primary debate for New York City Comptroller. I want to thank both of the candidates for joining us tonight. Let's go Knicks. Our partners, Julia Papa from 1010 Wins, Edward Martinez from El Diario for their questions, and of course my colleague right here, Henry Rossoff. You can tune in next Thursday, everybody. We have another big debate, same time, 7 p.m. right here on Pix 11 for our official Democratic primary debate for New York City Public Advocate, featuring incumbent Jumaane Williams and challenger Jennifer Rajkumar. Our pre-debate coverage starts at 6:30 p.m. And remember, polls open for the primary elections June 14th. That's a key date. Have a great night, everybody. I'm Dan Manarino. We'll see you back here tomorrow.